Family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs. And the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
To the TKDS Sports Network, Jackson Lightcap, and guess who's back? Matthew Pennington. He's back in the building, and not only is he back in the building, but it is also his birthday today. So, Matt, happy 22nd birthday to you. And I know it's been about a week and a half since we've seen, and since I've seen you. I know it's been about a week and a half since you've last been on this show, but I'm happy to have you back, partner.
Well, I appreciate the happy birthday, and yeah, if you can't tell in my voice, I still am not 100% back, but I'm well enough to be able to come back into the show. Yeah, the reason I wasn't here the past few weeks was I was as sick as can be. I don't know what it was that I got sick from, but all I remember was at the very end of the last show I did, I was pretty much off to the side coughing. It felt like coughing my lungs up while laughing, thinking it was pretty funny. Little did I know that would lead to me completely losing my voice and feeling terrible for about a week and a half. So glad to be back. I'm excited to get this show rolling like I messaged you when I was out. It was unfortunate because I wanted to hit the ground running and get this show going and not miss a day, but then I got pretty sick, so I thought it was for the best. And obviously when I didn't have a voice, there wasn't really an opportunity for me to, talk on a show that requires me to use my voice. If I don't have a voice, I kind of can't do the show, but still happy to be back and excited to see what we're going to be able to talk about this week.
Well, certainly happy that you're back here as well, Matt. And it seemed like there was a sickness at the TKDS Sports Network. In fact, we had to cancel our Saturday show because of just a lot of different things going on, a lot of people out. And nonetheless, Saturday, I was kind of up in the air as well. So nonetheless, I know that everybody out there watching is probably noticing, or if you've watched our show regularly, I know that you're noticing different graphics, different background, and maybe the setup looks a little bit more different. I know the cameras aren't really too friendly, at least on me. I got a rash on my face, and I know it's showing it right now. But nonetheless, we're here. We're trying to do the show. We're trying to persevere through. Sorry you got to look at us this way, but different graphics today, and the reason because of that is because our boss hijacked our equipment. So we're using a different setup today. We're hoping to be back to normal, but nonetheless, we get the show out. And you know the saying, the show must go on. So a little bit of a different setup today. Boss hijacked the equipment. We have a completely new system in the studio today. More testing with that as well. So just going to keep trying to plug forward.
Yeah, everything on your side is all crazy and chaotic. For me, I've got the camera in front of me. I've got the microphone right here.
Yours is just like every other day.
Mine's just like every other day. You over there, you're almost getting ready to pull your hair out, and you're going crazy over on that side of the table. So I'm fine. Jackson, he might be going crazy by the end of the show.
Nonetheless, though, busy weekend in the world of sports. Matt, let's get into it. We're going to start with the championship weekend. And obviously, there's a lot to talk about when you look at the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship. First off and foremost, the two teams that will be representing the NFL in the Super Bowl this season. It's a rematch from just a couple of years ago. Kansas City Chiefs going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Matt, to be honest, we're going to talk a little bit more about Super Bowl preview, but I'm going to state it now. I think that this is the best matchup that we could see. And although a lot of fans are looking like, well, the Ravens haven't been there in so long, the Lions have never been there in franchise history, maybe we could have gotten a better story, but we're starting to see these same teams again. But at the end of the day, this is the true case scenario. And I'm not just saying this because of who won the AFC Championship and who won the NFC Championship. You look at the 49ers all throughout the season, they were the most dominant team in the NFC. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. And then you look at what Kansas City was able to do to Baltimore yesterday. That's not a fluke. Kansas City could play Baltimore 10 out of 10 times, and I now have faith that they would win 10 out of 10 times. Kansas City and San Francisco, let's face it, I think that they're the two best teams in the National Football League, and it only makes sense that they get to play for a Super Bowl here in a little bit less than 2 weeks.
if my response to that, 10 times out of 10, Kansas City would win. If we see Baltimore go with the same play calling and the same scheming they did yesterday, 100% they would win. Kansas City would win 10 times out of 10. You got a run-heavy team that hands it off to the running backs, the two running backs on that team, 6 times in the entire game, not just in the first half, not just in the second half, the entire game. 6 carries for the 2 running backs. You had Zay Flowers, he had 2 attempts. Lamar Jackson, he had 8 attempts running the football. But they're two main backs who have been running the football, it seems like, not insane all season long, but they've been very, very consistent running the football all year long for the Ravens with Edwards and Hill. They had 6 combined carries yesterday. If you've watched Baltimore football throughout the entirety of this season, 6 carries combined for Justice Hill and Gus Edwards, you would think we were playing an inverse game of football that we usually see Baltimore play. They usually are never a pass-first team. They are usually, especially with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, they are such a run-focused team. Lamar Jackson, 37 attempts throwing the football yesterday. Usually, for Lamar Jackson, you'd think a game where he's throwing the ball, and obviously the number can sway a few passes more, a few passes less. I would say the window you want to see Lamar Jackson throwing the football where it might be the most comfortable, maybe around 27 passing attempts to 27 to 30, right around that range. But 37 total attempts passing the football yesterday. If we were to see Baltimore continue with that kind of scheme on offense against Kansas City, 10 times out of 10, the Chiefs are winning every single game. If we were to see the Ravens go to what we saw throughout the first 18 games we saw them play this year, maybe they win a few of those games. But the fact that they completely decided to almost not run the football at all, there's 23 combined yards on those 6 carries for Edwards and Hill. That to me was the most shocking part of the game. They gave their 2 running backs who have been workhorses all year long 6 carries in the AFC Championship game. For a run-heavy team, you give those 2 running backs that have been workhorses all year 6 carries, you are nowhere near playing what your scheme is good and built for.
And Matt, not to mention the fact, let's look at Kansas City and the Chiefs, and it seemed like as soon as the playoffs hit, everybody was counting them out because of their struggles that they had during the regular season. A lot of people were saying that this Chiefs team is the most vulnerable they've been when Patrick Mahomes has been at the helm. But Matt, I'll say this, they hit the postseason, and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid together in the postseason are one of the best coaching and quarterback duos of all time. The only other coaching quarterback duo that you could possibly compare, I'd say, is Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. But outside of that, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, once they get into the playoffs, I mean, it's almost over. This is a team that started to find their stride in the later last couple of games of the season. They carried it into the postseason. And, Matt, I think it was that game against Buffalo that ultimately really gave them momentum. I don't think anybody expected them to get by the Buffalo Bills, but Patrick Mahomes, again, when you look at what he's been able to do in really his entire career, but then you look especially what he's been able to do in the postseason, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. There's only 2 quarterbacks that have ever taken out Patrick Mahomes in the NFL playoffs. One of them being Tom Brady. He did twice. He did it in an AFC Championship game back in 2019. And then he did it in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago when he was on Tampa Bay. And the second was Joe Burrow from Cincinnati when they ended up beating the Chiefs, a big come-from-behind win, 21-3. That was just 2 years ago. So outside of Joe Burrow and Tom Brady, there's been no other quarterback that's ever been able to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. And, Matt, that now leads me into my next point. When you look, Patrick Mahomes is on a pedestal of his own. But when you look at, again, only 2 quarterbacks to knock him out of the playoffs, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow. The NFL and the media out there all wants to push narratives as, oh, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, it's the new Allen and it's the new Manning and Brady rivalry. And then I saw a lot of stuff with Lamar Jackson saying, oh, this Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson is going to be the next big rivalry and the next big thing as well. But in reality, the only quarterback that I think can go toe-to-toe and really give Patrick Mahomes a run for his money, especially in the postseason that's still active, is Joe Burrow. If there's any rivalry in the NFL, it's Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow and Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Outside of that, Patrick Mahomes It's not even fair. He wipes everybody. And I'm not saying that Burrow's better than Mahomes. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm just saying when you look at the overall record from Burrow to Mahomes compared to Mahomes to any other quarterback in the National Football League, NFL wants to push narratives of these other quarterbacks being rivals with Patrick Mahomes. No, the only rival that Patrick Mahomes has at the quarterback position is Joe Burrow from Cincinnati.
I would say Allen versus Mahomes is toe-to-toe with Burrow versus Mahomes. Obviously, we've seen so many matchups between both of these different rivalries that we're talking about throughout the past few seasons, but talking about the rivalry and how the only person that's gone toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, obviously, it wasn't in the postseason, but the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season, and then they lost to him in the postseason. And then you take a look at how that game ended up playing out. Tyler Bass misses a game-tying field goal in the last, minute or so of the game. So it's not like Mahomes completely destroyed Buffalo and there was no chance of the Bills having any chance of winning that football game. Then you've got a few years ago, the reason the overtime rules in the NFL changed was because Josh Allen and Mahomes played in overtime in the playoffs against each other, and it was an insane game between the two teams that went to overtime. I'm not saying that makes the rivalry between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes better than Joe Burrow versus Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying the way you framed that, it made it seem like there's nothing even close to Burrow versus Mahomes. But I think you can put them both on a very close pedestal, Allen versus Mahomes and Burrow versus Mahomes. But I completely agree with you. Everybody's thrown away Burrow versus Mahomes. But both Burrow and Mahomes and Allen and Mahomes, I feel like they're neck and neck fighting to see which is the bigger rivalry between the two of them. But I think both are pretty close to each other. And I would say Lamar versus Mahomes really doesn't have much footing whatsoever right now.
And going back to your Allen Mahomes rivalry, I guess this is what needs to happen for me to really be convinced as, oh my gosh, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, this is a great rivalry matchup. It seems like Josh Allen wins in the regular season, but he cannot beat Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. And that's where I'm coming from with this. That we're talking postseason right now, and until Josh Allen beats Patrick Mahomes in the postseason, frankly, I don't necessarily, I deem it a rivalry, but I don't deem it as big as a rivalry as Burrow and Mahomes, because both of them have gone toe-to-toe 2 times in the postseason, and they've split. Now, again, Josh Allen, he's been able to play Patrick Mahomes 3 different times in the postseason, and yeah, he's come close, but close doesn't cut it, especially in the NFL postseason. You're still taking a trip to Cancun if you end up losing, whether it's by 1 point or 100 points. You're still on your way to Cancun. So at the end of the day, until Josh Allen wins that playoff game against Patrick Mahomes, I'm not ready. I don't really see it. And I also will say this, and Matt, you and I talked about this off air. I'm sure you agree with me on this. Can we stop comparing any quarterback rivalry to Manning and Brady? Manning and Brady are 2 of the best quarterbacks to ever do it, and you can arguably say they're number 1 and number 2 to ever do it. And for a lot of fans and a lot of media narratives out there, and it's all media driven. Matt, we're guilty of this. We're part of media. But at the end of the day, there's going to be no other rivalry that compares to Manning and Tom Brady. If Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes is the best thing we have to a Manning and Brady rivalry nowadays, it doesn't come close. There's nothing that's going to come close to Manning and Brady, who are arguably number 1 and number 2 over time.
And yeah, I completely agree with that. Until we see quarterbacks cement themselves as the new greatest to ever do it and the new second greatest to ever do it in NFL history, I think it's safe to say that you can make the argument that maybe the record between the two of them might end up being like Manning versus Brady. But with what those 2 guys brought to the table every time they played a football game against each other, it's hard to say that Burrow versus Mahomes, Allen versus Mahomes, if you want to put Lamar Jackson versus Mahomes, even though I think that's the first time Lamar Jackson has made it to the AFC Championship game in his career, unless you want to start maybe putting Lamar in the conversation. But yeah, you take a look at Josh Allen versus Mahomes. It's a great rivalry. It's nowhere near Brady versus Manning. Burrow versus Mahomes. It's an amazing rivalry. It's nowhere near Brady versus Manning. Like you said, with the fact that it's the only reason I wouldn't say it's 1 and 2 is because I think you also kind of have to keep Joe Montana potentially in the conversation.
Arguably.
In the conversation, yeah. But that doesn't mean it's not
Two of the
top three quarterbacks
Two
in
of the top
NFL
three,
history.
no matter how you chalk it up.
Exactly. That doesn't mean it's like I was going to say. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's not like It's not like saying that means it's not two of the top three, or maybe even if you want to put them there, 1 and 2 playing against each other. But like I said, until we see, I mean, if there's anybody that's going to do it, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes, potentially being the best quarterback to ever do it, potentially surpassing Brady, surpassing Manning, surpassing Montana for the best quarterback to ever do it. But I'm not saying Joe Burrow can't do it. I'm not saying Josh Allen can't do it. But they're definitely not on pace to do it. They're on pace to maybe be top 15, top 10 quarterbacks in NFL history, but not top 3. Mahomes, he's on pace for that. And he's the only one in the NFL that's on pace for that right now. So talking about 1 versus 2 or maybe 1 versus 3, however you want to put them, but it's still two top 3 quarterbacks in NFL history playing each other. Right now, we have one piece to that puzzle. We haven't quite found the second piece to it yet.
And Matt, not to mention, you talk about Patrick Mahomes being on pace, and frankly, I don't think anybody can deny that he's on pace for being the best quarterback of all time. And I know people are going to bring up that Tom Brady's got 7 rings, but at the same time, Patrick Mahomes, he's 28 years old, and he has a chance to capture his 3rd here in just 13 days away. So again, when you look at what Mahomes has done, every year he's been a starter. He never has missed an AFC Championship game. In fact, it took him to a 7th year in the league to get his first ever road playoff game. And it wasn't like he just didn't make the playoffs the last 6 years. He's made them every single year. So again, when you look at Patrick Mahomes and his resume and what he's done, there's no question about it. If he continues to win and continues to do what he's doing, and no question about it, he's going to be the new GOAT. He's going to surpass Brady, talent-wise, accolade-wise. He's on pace to do so. And not to mention, if he gets a 3rd ring already before the time he's 28, I think he's on pretty good pace. Time for a break. We'll be back with more, and we're talking the NFC side of things on Sports Now. Matt, real quick before we take a break, I just wanted to say happy birthday. And I missed you, man. I'm happy to be back with you.
I'll say thank you. And before we go to a break, one point I wanted to bring up too, to me, for Patrick Mahomes to be the number 1 quarterback in NFL history, he doesn't have to win the most Super Bowls. Otherwise, Bill Russell would be the best NBA player to ever do it. And everybody's talking about Jordan and LeBron being the best to ever do it. So I don't think Mahomes needs 7 to get that mark. But
the more the merrier.
The more the merrier. The more helps, though. The more of them help.
Time for a break. We'll be back.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
I'm thrilled to be at Wittenberg at this time and place, as the university is perfectly positioned to welcome an esports program like none other. Wittenberg's impressive athletics tradition and Tiger Up spirit, mixed with a strong commitment to student success, will allow for a program that competes at the highest level while also caring deeply for each player, both personally and professionally. Esports at Wittenberg will not only be about gaming, but will also be about changing the game. Together, we will build a supportive, dynamic community as we bring our own distinct light to the global phenomenon of esports right here in Springfield, Ohio. It's time to Tiger Up. Let's go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs. And the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Back here on Sports Now, Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. We're talking about Championship Sunday across the National Football League, and we have a busy show as well. We're going to talk about Championship Sunday, and then, of course, we're going to go through our Super Bowl preview. 49ers versus the Chiefs. We have Shelby Dermer, beat writer for Xavier Men's basketball, joining us at 4:45 to talk Xavier basketball. We're talking about them in hour number 2, and then we'll shift our focus back into the college world because there's been a lot that's happened, and that also has not happened in college football in this offseason that we're going to get into talking about it. But Matt, let's now transfer and let's go into talk about the NFC Championship game. The Lions were up 24-7 at halftime. The San Francisco 49ers came out of the second half, shot out of a cannon, and it was pretty much all she wrote. The San Francisco 49ers putting up 27 points in that second half. They scored 3 touchdowns in that third quarter, 2 of those touchdowns within a span of 3 minutes. And again, when you look at what San Francisco was able to do in that game, there's no question about it. San Francisco coming back down that much. They had all the momentum. They're a team that deserves to be in the Super Bowl, and that's where they are.
And yeah, there was one thing I kept seeing going into that game, talking about the Lions defense potentially being able to stifle Christian McCaffrey, but it's safe to say that wasn't the case, and it's safe to say that it feels like at this rate, it doesn't matter who's playing against San Francisco, trying to stop Christian McCaffrey is like trying to solve some crazy calculus 3 equation. It's really difficult to try to do it. You take a look at the stats, 90 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 catches for 42 yards. There's a reason I was happy he was on my fantasy football team this past year because man, has he been a monster all season long. It's safe to say when it comes down to the Lions, obviously not the way you want your season to end. You're up 24-7 at the half. You had all of the momentum on your side, shooting out of a cannon early on in the game, going up 14-0 when I think it was 3 minutes to go in the first quarter, and you scored the first touchdown in the first 2 minutes of the game, and San Francisco even had a drive that they drove down the field, missed a field goal, and then you were able to respond by taking the football back in your hands, marching it down the field, and scoring another touchdown. But tough break for the Detroit Lions, talking about how good this team has been all season long. There's really no other way of putting it. This team, the Detroit Lions, were phenomenal all season long. There's really no other way you can put it. You take a look at how good they were and how balanced they were running and throwing the football yesterday. They didn't have as many rushing attempts, but when you're trying to kind of shut down the 49ers as fast as possible, the one thing I kept hearing about this game was the way the Lions want to win this football game is by throwing it early and putting San Francisco behind. They were able to do it, but the offense just decided to take the second half off and not really do too much when it comes to production-wise. But you take a look at the stats throughout the game, 273 yards for Jared Goff throwing the football, running the football for the Detroit Lions, over 170 total yards running the football yesterday. It was a very balanced attack on both running and passing for the Lions. And the same can be said for the 49ers. You had 267 yards for Brock Purdy running the football. They had north of 150 yards on the ground yesterday. It's safe to say this was how we at least myself, this is how I expected the NFC Championship to go. Close game between both teams, came down to the wire, and we get to see a rematch of, I think it was the 2019-2020 season Super Bowl between the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes, Super Bowl 54 to be exact. And Matt, obviously you look back at that second half, and I know that the Lions are going to receive a lot of flack and a lot of criticism from this, and it's Dan Campbell opting to go for it 2 times on fourth down in opponent's territory. They could have taken the 3 points. They could have gotten the field goal. And if they were able to take those points, they had one chance to tie it, one chance to take the lead at one point. Say they went for those field goals, say they cashed in and got those 6 points, then the very last drive that they had is that's possibly a game winner. It's a completely different scenario because now you don't need 2 scores because now you can win it with a touchdown. And in fact, if my math's correct, I beg your pardon, you would still need a touchdown, but that could have been the game winner. So at the end of the day, when you look at the Lions going the more aggressive route, especially in that second half, and it costed them. And that's ultimately what costed them the game because both those stops on 4th down swung momentum right back to the San Francisco 49ers. And what did they do? They marched down the field and score. Now, I understand that was Dan Campbell's philosophy all season long, was they were going to be aggressive, and it worked out for them all the way up until the NFC Championship game. But Matt, I will also say this. There is a point and a time. There's a time and a place where being aggressive is great, and I love being aggressive. I think that Dan Campbell's philosophy when it's being aggressive, that is great, and that's his philosophy. You play to win. You don't play to just keep it close. You play to win, and I like that. That's what Dan Campbell brings to the table, but at the same time, was he getting a little bit too aggressive there? Because I certainly think so. Take the points, especially on the road in the NFC Championship game, and you take those points, it's a completely different outcome at the end.
What were because I wasn't able to watch the game, what were the times of those missed field goals? What was not times, what was the score when both of those field goals were missed, do you know?
So they weren't missed, they were...
or not gone for, I mean, when they could have gone for.
When they went for it, one was in the fourth
quarter.
One was in the fourth quarter, 27-24, and one was in the early stages of the third when they were still up by a couple scores.
So it would have made it...
I think it would have put it back to a 3-score game.
Okay, so... Hearing that and hearing that the other one would have made it, 27-27 score?
Yes.
That makes me, I was going to say that, I'm still going to back this point. I don't think it was a horrible decision for Dan Campbell to be as aggressive as he was because, like you talked about, that's been the philosophy for the Lions all season long. I guarantee you Dan Campbell would have rather died on the hill of sticking with what we've done all season long and sticking to our guns and knowing what we do best and being aggressive than going for those field goals. San Francisco gets the ball back after the Detroit Lions get the football, and they have that drive that you said could have iced the game. They don't get anything out of it. San Francisco gets the ball. They march down the field. They win it. I guarantee you Dan Campbell would have rather gone out going aggressive and playing aggressive like we've seen the Detroit Lions play all season long than playing soft, playing passive, not going for it like we saw him go for it and not get it, but when it comes down to had they decided to just go for the field goals, they'd have been up. They would have been, because you would have to take away the touchdown from that drive that they had at the late stages of the game. So that would make it 34. That would make it 34. I'm trying to.
You're the math whiz.
It would be 34-30, I think is what the score would be when Detroit got the football, because you take a look at, you do all the math, you do the numbers. They had, it would have been 34-30 when they got that last possession of the game. So they would have still had to march the football down the field because that drive resulted in a touchdown. You talk about it potentially being game winner. They still would have had to go down and get a touchdown on that drive, because if they would have gone down and got a touchdown, then they would have been up 37-34, and then there would have been an opportunity and a chance at San Francisco to march the football down the field. But like I said, when it comes down to what Dan Campbell has done all season long, how aggressive he's been with that offense all season long, even on the drive that they had at the end of the game in the last few minutes to make it a 34-31 game, it was 4th and 3 and down 10 points. They went for it and scored a touchdown on 4th and 3 when they could have gone for the field goal to make it a 34-27 game. So the aggressiveness that Dan Campbell had all game long and all season long, I can't hate on it. He's been doing it all season long. It's been working. There's been times where it hasn't been working all season long. But like I said, I know, and I would think Lions fans, with how they've been supporting this team and how much they've loved this team all season long, I would hope they would agree with me on this statement. You'd rather die on the hill going down the way and going down and losing the game, the aggressive style and the way you've been playing football all season, than changing the way you play and still losing the football. Agreed. And still potentially losing the football game. I'm not a Lions fan. I'm a Browns fan. But I would hope that Lions fans would hear what I'm saying here and agree with me. You would rather go down the way you've been playing all season long than change things up and still end up eventually potentially losing the football game. There's no guarantee that they would have lost if they went for those field goals. But I know myself, if it was the Browns in that situation, I would have much rather watched the Browns with Joe Flacco, at least in the later stages of the season, slinging the football down the field as much as you possibly can with a chance to try to, if it's a potential to tie the game, if it's a potential to extend your lead. I would rather see the Browns go down slinging the football around the field like we saw them do with Joe Flacco all throughout the last half of the last quarter of the season, than watching the Browns maybe try to be content. And obviously, they are a run-heavy team, but without Chubb, the running game was not that good. So I would have rather, being a Browns fan, if the Browns were in that scenario, I'd rather see them go out the way they've been playing all season long.
And Matt, not to mention the fact that now let's flip it over to the San Francisco 49ers. We have a couple minutes before we need to take a break and then go into our Super Bowl preview. We're running a little bit behind schedule here, especially with Shelby joining us here in about 11 minutes. And I know that, Matt, I think that you were watching the show last week, but I know that on, I think it was the Thursday show, I could be mistaken on the day, but I was hosting alongside Tim Capel. Tim, great guy. Me and him got into it a little bit. It was a little bit of a debate, but at the same time, it makes for hopefully a good show and some hopeful entertainment as well. And in fact, I reached out to him today to see if he usually watches the show. I reached out to him today to see if he wanted to call and continue this debate, but he said that he couldn't. He's got father obligations and stuff like that. So we're going to have him on once again another time to talk about it. But can we start putting respect on Brock Purdy's name?
I've been doing that, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Can we start putting respect on Brock Purdy's name? Just because he's Mr. Irrelevant, this is a guy that has come into the National Football League who was not given an opportunity until he was the third quarterback on the depth chart, and all he has done is won. He has now led in the first 2 years of his career. He's now led his team, the San Francisco 49ers, back-to-back NFC championships, winning one of them to go to the Super Bowl. And I know that there's a lot of talk out there saying, he's a system manager. He's a quarterback manager. He's a game manager. He's a system quarterback. He wouldn't be great anywhere else you go. If you go back and watch the film and look at the amount of plays he made yesterday in that second half, you will know he is not a system quarterback. The amount of times that the pocket broke down, the amount of times he was able to make plays with his legs, scrambling into the open field, able to get outside the pocket and throw. The throw to Kyle Juszczyk on the first down when he was able to break out of two defenders. He looked pretty shiesty out there and was able to roll out and deliver a strike. The last touchdown throw he had, he threaded the needle, put it right between two defenders. Yes, he's got Deebo Samuel. Yes, he's got Brandon Ayuk. Yes, he's got Christian McCaffrey. Yes, he's got George Kittle. Just because he's got the best supporting cast in the NFL still does not make him a system quarterback. Again, there's so many intangibles that he's been able to do, and although he's got all those players around him, the amount of plays he's able to make on his own and improvise. A system quarterback will stand back in the pocket, look at one read, two reads, and then either check it down or throw it to somebody else, or throw it. It's a designed route, and it's going to be open 9 times out of 10. But when you look at Brock Purdy, he's going through third, fourth, fifth progression. He's putting the ball in nice places. And when the pocket breaks down, he knows how to improvise. Because he knows how to improvise, that's why he's not a system quarterback. He can be a franchise guy for the San Francisco 49ers, but yet he just gets absolutely canned right now because everybody wants to claim he's a system quarterback. But again, when you look at how he improvises, you look at how he carries himself, there's no question about it. Brock Purdy is becoming a very, very, very good NFL quarterback. Just saying he's a system quarterback because of his talent that he has around him is like saying Joe Burrow is a system quarterback because he's got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. It's like saying Patrick Mahomes used to be a system quarterback because he had Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman, Tyreek Hill. The list goes on and on and on. Again, Brock Purdy, put respect on his name. He is not a system quarterback. And I know, again, last week, Tim and I got into this a little bit. He sees the other side, and I tried to get him to call in. Again, he's got some father obligations, so I tried. We're going to have this debate another time. But again, this is a guy that's coming in the National Football League, and he's done nothing but one. And the ability for him to get outside the pocket, make plays, deliver great balls, just because he's got a great supporting cast around him doesn't mean he can be a franchise guy for the San Francisco 49ers moving forward.
I'll tell you what makes him not a system quarterback. being down 17 points in the NFC
that's another
Championship,
reason.
being down 17 points at half in the NFC Championship game and putting up 27 in that second half. Obviously, not all of the touchdowns were him throwing the football, but still, you take a look at some of the runs. They were short yardage run plays. I think there was a 2-yard touchdown run in the second half by Christian McCaffrey, and I think a 3-4 yard touchdown run by Elijah Mitchell. You don't get to that point in the field unless you're throwing the football with the fact that they only had 150 total yards. You take a look at what Brock Purdy was able to do. Obviously, the touchdown numbers don't shoot off the page, and he does have that one interception. But I'll tell you what a system quarterback wouldn't have done yesterday. A system quarterback would not have taken the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl, down 17 points, down 24-7 at the half. I guarantee you a system quarterback would not have San Francisco making it to the Super Bowl. And like you mentioned, we keep talking about Patrick Mahomes, how when he's a starter, Kansas City has not missed making it to the AFC Championship game. In the tenure that Patrick Mahomes has been the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, they have not missed the AFC Championship game. Guess who also hasn't missed the NFC Championship game when he started? Brock Purdy. Obviously, it's only 2 years, and last year he didn't start every single game of the season, but it's 2 NFC Championship appearances, one of them being a win yesterday to take the 49ers to the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying it would have been guaranteed that we would have seen San Francisco make it to the Super Bowl last year, but he got hurt in the NFC Championship in the first half. That hurts the team. That definitely hurt the San Francisco 49ers, and it did not help their case whatsoever against the Philadelphia Eagles last year in the NFC Championship game. So, talking about people saying Brock Purdy's a system quarterback, yesterday proved, like I said, the touchdown numbers don't fly off the page. You only had one, and the passing yards, you can say, might not fly off the page. You only had 267 total passing yards, which was only 6 less than Jared Goff. But the other thing I want to say, too, because thinking about it as well, there's not really many conversations and talks about Jared Goff being a system quarterback, is there? Take a look at his team. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams. That is a lot of firepower on that Detroit Lions team. Do we hear anybody saying Jared Goff's a system quarterback? At least I haven't. Not as much as they've been saying Brock Purdy's a system quarterback.
We take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. That's another team that comes to mind. DeAndre Swift. They have Devonta Smith. They have A.J. Brown. They have Dallas Goedert. But yet we don't hear anything about Jalen Hurts being a system quarterback. Just because you have a great supporting cast around you does not make a system quarterback. And I'm sorry, I'm not convinced that Brock Purdy couldn't go to another team and be serviceable. Obviously, if you go to the Carolina Panthers, because the Panthers are in disarray, you're not going to be able to win many football games there.
Or the Patriots.
Or the Patriots, or the Commanders for that matter as well. There's a lot of teams in the NFL that just have, it doesn't matter if Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback. Are they going to win a couple extra games? Yes. But are they actually going to make the playoffs? No, because they don't have a defense. They are still missing other parts on their team. But if Brock Purdy were to go, let's say, to the Las Vegas Raiders, I think the Raiders are better than what they were this season. What was their struggle this season? The Las Vegas Raiders quarterback play. You put them on the Seattle Seahawks. I think he holds his ground. You put him on the Rams. I think that he's a great quarterback. You put him on so many other teams across the National Football League, and he's going to find success. And because of that, he's not just a product of Kyle Shanahan. We need to start putting respect on his name. He's a good quarterback. Would I say he's top 10? No, not at all. But at the same time, is he a system quarterback? No, not at all. He's a franchise guy. He does the 49ers well. He's a guy that can go elsewhere and give that team success as well. Another quarterback, and Matt, this might actually be, we talk about Brock Purdy having the best supporting cast around him. Another guy who's right there with him, Justin Herbert. He's got Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. I get Mike Williams was hurt this season, but is he a system quarterback? A couple years ago, he was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. So where is this narrative between, is it because he's the 7th round draft pick? Remember, we all said that Brady was a product of Belichick, and then in his first year in Tampa Bay, he won a Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, where's this narrative coming from? What truly defines a system quarterback to a franchise guy? That's a genuine question. What defines a system quarterback to a franchise guy? Because there's some players that are in the very same boat who's had less success. Oh, they're not a franchise guy. They're a system quarterback. But then we don't see anything said about, like you said, Jared Goff. It's a big question. It is time for a break, though. Shelby Dermer joins us here coming up next.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
I'm thrilled to be at Wittenberg at this time and place, as the university is perfectly positioned to welcome an esports program like none other. Wittenberg's impressive athletics tradition and tiger-up spirit, mixed with a strong commitment to student success, will allow for a program that competes at the highest level while also caring deeply for each player, both personally and professionally. Esports at Wittenberg will not only be about gaming, but will also be about changing the game. Together, we will build a supportive, dynamic community as we bring our own distinct light to the global phenomenon of esports right here in Springfield, Ohio. It's time to tiger up. Let's go.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington as we welcome you back here to Sports Now, and we are joined with Shelby Dermer. Shelby Dermer, who is a beat writer for the Xavier Musketeers. He works through the Cincinnati Enquirer, and he covers Xavier basketball. So he's covered all 20 of their games so far, 10-10 so far on the season. And Shelby, once again, thank you for, I know you're in the CVG airport right now. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us here today.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Yes. In fact, we've actually tried getting him on the show for, it seems like the last couple of months, but it just seemed like none of our schedules aligned. Of course, you're traveling covering Xavier, and you would be at shoot-arounds or media conferences while we were live. So happy that it was able to work out, and I'm happy to spend the next 15 minutes with you.
Yeah, you guys' show comes at like the 4 to 6 window is tough when Xavier usually practices right around 3 o'clock if I'm not, in some airport in middle America somewhere. So I'm happy we can get this going.
So Shelby, let's start off a little bit of a basic question. Xavier 10-10 so far on the season. What growth have you seen? Obviously a tough loss on Sunday against number 1 UConn, but it seems like it's been a season that's been very, very close. They just have not been able to overcome it. The amount of 1 to 2 possession losses that they have this season stands out. And in reality, it correlates to them being such a young team.
Yeah, Jackson, you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, from the beginning, you were wondering how long it would take this team to gel. And then, you add in that they're playing probably the hardest schedule, maybe probably a top 10 ranked schedule in the nation right now. You think of Purdue and Houston, and now Cincinnati's really tough. And then you have the Big East Challenge, 2 games against the number 1 team in the nation in UConn, and they've been right there. They miss a shot at Villanova at the buzzer to win the game. They lose 2 really bad games in non-conference play to Oakland and Delaware, and then Houston was by 6. They hung tough with Purdue. They blew a big lead in Washington out in Las Vegas. So, yeah, when you say they were kind of knocking at the door, that's where they've been all season. They were close to beating Creighton on the road Tuesday, and then UConn was just a polar opposite of that, just getting crushed by the Huskies in Hartford.
And Shelby, when you look at Xavier, what's been the morale of that locker room? I know that you've spent a lot of time in the media within the Cintas Center as well. Beautiful facility. But what's been the morale in that locker room for the Xavier Musketeers? Is this a confident team? Is this a team that's kind of struggled finding their confidence and that's maybe resulted some of these tough losses on the floor? Is this a team that's bouncing back? What's really the morale in this locker room, and how's it affected their play on the floor?
Well, I'd say the morale in the locker room is one of the best things about this Xavier team, and Sean Miller said just as much, where he boasted about his team being able to, not ride the highs too high and not get too low with the lows, and there have been some craters in this season. As I mentioned, losing to Oakland and Delaware in the non-conference, coming up so close against really good teams, blowing a big lead. And then obviously what we had on Sunday. But it takes me back to Tuesday. They lost to Creighton 85-78. Creighton's ranked 17th in the nation. I'm not sure what they are now. The new AP poll just came out while I was flying. But Xavier led by 6-7 points in the second half there and had every opportunity to win that game. And Creighton pulled it out down the stretch. 7-point game, another, like you said, 2-possession loss or so. 3-possession, I guess, with a 7-point margin. But the very next day, I mean, they were back at practice, and the music's bumping, and they were ready to get to work. So I think that's one of the you don't know what you don't know, and for this team with so many young players, and the experience that they have is their transfers playing at smaller conferences, so they're new to the Big East, and they've always kept that confidence high, and I think that's going to bode well for them down the stretch here in Big East play, and they're going to need it. You lose to UConn by 43 points after you were so close to beating them here at Cintas Center a couple weeks ago. That was a 5-point game they led in the second half, so they're going to have to keep that confidence. And Sean Miller said, this is the biggest challenge is you can not get too high with the highs when you beat Providence on the road, but when you get blown out by 43 points, their worst loss in 24 years, that's when you're really going to find out where that confidence level's at when St. John's comes here Wednesday.
And not to mention, that's going to be a big game once again for the Musketeers to try to get back in the win column. And not just that, but also build some momentum because with them playing in the Big East, obviously still a lot to play for because the Big East, obviously one of the tougher conferences across college basketball.
Oh, no doubt, Jackson. I mean, you look at the standings right now. Seton Hall was sitting pretty, and now they've kind of hit a slide. And same with St. John's. They lost 3 games by a combined 7 points. I think they lost 2 by 1. So Xavier's in 8th right now at 4-5, but you have Georgetown and DePaul. You still have 3 games against them. So you really have no margin of error. But yeah, you're gonna be playing night in and night out where you don't have time to lick your wounds after you get blown out by UConn because there's another test. St. John's coming here and they beat you by 15 back in December right before Christmas. Then after that, you get DePaul, and then the month of February, Villanova comes here, and then Creighton comes here in a 4-day span, and then you go to New Jersey to play Seton Hall. So it's a tough conference. I mean, no one's questioning that. It's one of the toughest. I mean, Sean Miller says it's the toughest in the nation. I think the Big 12 is probably leading that category right now. But yeah, there's nightly challenges every single time you step on the floor.
And Shelby, when you look at Xavier this season and you just kind of glanced at their schedule heading up into February as well, you have Villanova at the Cintas Center, Creighton at the Cintas Center, all after you play St. John's at the Cintas Center. Big games coming up for the Xavier Musketeers, but this is also a Musketeers team that's played really, really well at home this season, 8-4 at home compared to just 1-5 on the road.
Yeah, no doubt that it really starts with, Quincy Oliveri. He's been, the biggest bright spot for this team. He's averaging 17.8 points a game. And his shooting splits, if you take a look down, what he's done on the road versus home, it's almost insane. It's to think about how much better he is at home and how much the Xavier offense hums when they play inside a Cintas Center. 92 points against Georgetown, 85 against Butler. No doubt that Xavier's happy that 4 of their next 6 games are going to be at home.
Yeah, and again, when you look at Xavier, obviously, as you mentioned, a very young team and a lot of players that obviously who transferred in from smaller conferences, still trying to get used to that Big East play. But now we're turning into the second half of the season, and now with a lot of these games at home, it is still possible that Xavier now, with the experience, with the young guys getting the experience, knowing what the Big East may bring to the table, some of these transfers that have come in now knowing what the Big East brings to the table, they're now starting to gel together. Hopefully they're going to start playing some better basketball than what we saw on Sunday against UConn. But with them coming at home, frankly, I don't think that there's any reason why Xavier cannot go on a run to at least bump their stock in the Big East and then maybe try to make some noise in the Big East tournament where they could slip into the March Madness tournament or even the NIT.
Yeah, no doubt, Jackson. And you mentioned, these transfers getting comfortable. I think the biggest proponent of that is Davion McKnight at point guard now. There was a time, around Thanksgiving, early December, where this guy's a 1,000-point scorer, and he's not averaging very many for Xavier. He wasn't shooting the ball well. And now the last 4 games, he scored 76 points. So he's getting more comfortable in the offense. Xavier's still a little, a week on the bench. The depth for this team, because of the injuries to Zach Freemantle and Jerome Hunter for the season, they're relying on a lot of freshmen, Trey Green, Sasha Siani, Lazar Djokovic, not giving them much off the bench. So we're still looking for nightly contributions off the bench in that area. But no doubt where you look at their home schedule and how well they've done at home compared to, being on the road, where you mentioned bumping your stock. That's exactly what they need to do. They have no margin of error, especially when you lose 2 non-conference games at home. Delaware and Oakland just really makes this resume not look great, but you have a chance to turn that around with some big matchups at Cintas Center in February.
Shelby, let's rewind and let's go back to January 10th. It was a Wednesday when you played UConn at the Cintas Center, lost that game by 5, and frankly, a game that a lot of people are saying that if a few other things and aspects of that game went into Xavier's way, the Musketeers could have ended up winning that one. But then that following Saturday, January 13th, a big win on the road against Providence. You won by 20, 85-65, carried that into Butler, carried that into Georgetown. This was a team that was on a 3-game winning streak, and a lot of people thought that they were picking up some steam before being knocked down by Creighton, and then, of course, the big loss to Sunday by UConn. How do you bounce back from that? Because it looked like during that 3-game winning streak, Xavier was finally starting to find their groove. They were finally starting to get comfortable. They were finally starting to ultimately play their best basketball that we saw this season. And then to lose to Creighton and then to have that blowout loss on Sunday to UConn. And we talk about Xavier, still a lot to play for, but no room for error from here on out. In a big game coming up against St. John's at home on Wednesday. And how does Xavier and how does Coach Sean Miller get the Xavier Musketeers to look past Creighton and UConn games and remind them that, hey, the couple of weeks between the 10th and the 19th, we were playing our best basketball. How do we get back to that? How do we not forget the last couple of games, but learn from those last couple of games and move forward?
Yeah, well, I think it's imperative to mention losing to Creighton, losing to UConn. They were pretty significant underdogs in both of those games. So, yes, the way you lose to UConn is alarming, but, those are 2 of your 3 toughest games remaining on the schedule. I think Marquette at the end of February, is still probably the hardest one left. But you go back to avoiding pockets of poor play because we've seen Xavier the Connecticut game, they were winning in the second half, and then they went 12 minutes where they only made one field goal. At Villanova, they lose that game by 1 point. They gave up 5 points in 2.5 seconds because they didn't box out on a free throw, and Villanova got back-to-back and ones. Creighton, the same way. The offense fell flat in the second half. And then the UConn game, it's honestly an outlier because they were just stumbled from the start. Down 10-0, the game was over. So I think you get back to Cintas Center, you get back to rebounding is the biggest component, and something Sean Miller preaches every day at practice. They're doing box-out drills. They're getting physical because they know how big of a challenge the Big East is on a nightly basis. So I think it comes back to a hard-nosed defensive effort and something Xavier desperately needs after giving up 184 points in the last 2 games.
Well, Shelby, once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We know we've talked to you on this show, but obviously you had a big promotion over the summer, getting promoted from the Cincinnati Enquirer to be the beat writer for the Xavier Musketeers. So congratulations on that. And we'd love to talk to you once again here in the future once our schedules align. But once again, Shelby Dermer, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. Thanks for having me.
Once again, that is Shelby Dermer from the Xavier Musketeers. He's their beat writer and also from the Cincinnati Enquirer. We move on to hour number 2, and we're going to continue this Xavier talk between Matt and I, and then we're also going to move into college football and what transfers, what moves have been made at the coaching position, a lot more to come on Sports Now.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
I'm thrilled to be at Wittenberg at this time and place, as the university is perfectly positioned to welcome an esports program like none other. Wittenberg's impressive athletics tradition and tiger-up spirit, mixed with a strong commitment to student success, will allow for a program that competes at the highest level while also caring deeply for each player, both personally and professionally. Esports at Wittenberg will not only be about gaming, but will also be about changing the game. Together, we will build a supportive, dynamic community as we bring our own distinct light to the global phenomenon of esports right here in Springfield, Ohio. It's time to tiger up. Let's go.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. Once again, we're moving on to hour number 2 of this show. For those of you who look at the show setup today and are noticing things a little bit different, including the background and the graphics. I'm hoping it does not stay. Our boss hijacked our computer because he needed to do some maintenance on it. So we have we have a completely different setup today. So nonetheless, I think it's worked out well. The show must go on, and the conversation must go on as well. We just got done talking with Shelby Dermer, the beat writer for the Cincinnati Enquirer, who covers Xavier men's basketball. Xavier, a big loss against UConn, and Matt, we're just going to kind of recap that conversation for the next couple minutes or so, because we're going to focus a lot on our college basketball like we usually do on Tuesday, because a lot of men's college basketball will play on Tuesday night. So we're going to talk about UD. They dropped to 21 after their loss against Richmond on Saturday. We're talking about Ohio State, UC, Xavier, Wright State. We're talking about all of those schools and more tomorrow here on Sports Now. But Matt, let's kind of recap that conversation with Shelby. And as he mentioned, a very young team the Xavier Musketeers are, but 8-4 at home, 1-5 on the road. That's one of the correlations you're going to see with a young team. And this is a young team that's played very close outside of their game against UConn. This is a team that's hung in games. They've been in games. They've hung close against some of the top teams in the entire nation. And if you don't look at the Xavier Musketeers, and although they're 10-10 this season, they'd practically have to win out if they wanted to end up winning or making it into March Madness. They probably have to win out. But at the end of the day, even if it doesn't happen this season, you get the sense that with how close they've played, the Xavier Musketeers, their future is bright, and this is going to be a bright basketball team here just probably as soon as later this season.
And yeah, talking about this Xavier team, I mean, you take a look at, and you brought up the fact that they've played close. You take a look at their 10 losses on the season, they have 3 losses by double digits. Every other loss, I believe, was within 7 points. In those 3 losses, St. John's on the road, then against Purdue and UConn. Two of some of the best teams in college basketball.
2 top 5 teams.
As we speak. 2 of some of the best college basketball teams you are going to face no matter who you are at any given moment. It's actually, you say 2 top 5 teams, it's number 1 and number 2 right now. So the fact that 2 of the 3 losses for this Xavier Musketeers team that were double-digit losses, one of them was a very tough in-conference St. John's team who continues to be in that conversation and on that bubble before they lost those last few games of being a top 25 team. And then number 1 and number 2 in the entire country, and those are your only losses on a 10-loss season to this point that have been by double digits. I think that tells you all you need to know about this Xavier team. Obviously, they would like their record to be a little bit better than 10-10 at this point of the year, but the fact that they've played within single digits of every team they've lost to, outside of obviously the game against UConn, who's number 1 in the country, 12-point loss to Purdue, number 2 in the country, and then a pretty tough loss to St. John's on the road earlier on this season. And I think that was one of their first conference games. If not, it was their first conference game of the year. Taking a look at their schedule, it was their very first conference game of the season. So this Xavier Musketeers team, like we've said so many different times, you take a look at the fact that they're 10-10. You take a look at the fact that they're 4-5 in conference right now. They're more towards the bottom of the Big East. But it's safe to say this Musketeers team, they have played a lot better than 10-10. They've played so much better than 10-10. And talking about needing to be perfect throughout the remainder of the regular season to have a chance of making it into March Madness or maybe even the NIT, I'll tell you what can help. They've got a home game against Creighton. They've got a home game against Marquette. Creighton, currently 13. Marquette, currently number 9. Then they've got a road game against Marquette as well at the later stages of February. Two wins in those 3 games can boost and can just continue to build when it comes to quad 1 wins, when it comes to good wins that are going to be good for a team to make a case to make it into March Madness. And this can all be null and void if they decide to absolutely run the gauntlet of the Big East tournament and win it all. If they win that tournament, they're in no matter what. You punch a ticket if you win your conference tournament at the end of the regular season. But for Xavier, if they don't win the Big East tournament, I wouldn't say they have to win every single game throughout the remainder of this year, especially if in the tournament they face a Creighton, they face a Marquette, maybe even UConn, and they win those games. I think it's safe to say for Xavier to make it into March Madness, they've got 2, 4, 6, 8. I just completely messed up where I was. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 games left to go in the regular season. They win 8 or 9 of those games, with 2 of the wins being against Creighton and Marquette. Maybe a loss against Marquette if they end up losing to St. John's or Providence, teams that have been around that top 25 conversation or been inside the top 25 this year. It might be okay to lose those games, but it's safe to say for this Xavier Musketeers team, a loss to DePaul, a loss to Butler, a loss to Georgetown, those might be games that it's going to be a lot tougher for them to try to claw their way into March Madness or into the NIT if they lose those games. But if they completely run the table throughout the remainder of the season, and like I said, take down Creighton at home, take down Marquette at home, and then in the Big East tournament, take down another ranked team, I wouldn't see why it's not possible for Xavier to potentially be a team in March Madness because of how good they've played against good teams throughout the entirety of this season.
Yeah, Matt, and when you look at Xavier, again, a very young team with young teams in college basketball, this time of the season is when you start to find your stride and find your rhythm. That's what I'm waiting to see if Xavier can do that. And it's going to be a lot easier said than done, especially after coming off of that big loss. As Shelby mentioned it, the worst loss in Xavier basketball history in 24 years. It was a 99-56 loss. And frankly, Xavier they never had it from the start. They went down 18-5 at the very beginning, and it was pretty much, you knew that UConn was going to run away with it. Now, it was a big game for UConn because remember, UConn, they were tight. It was a close game with the Huskies back when they played at the Cintas Center. So, Matt, at the end of the day, the main question is, how can Xavier bounce back after that loss against the Huskies? Because if they let that loss plague them, it could derail their season and any hope they have left. But if they're able to use that as a learning experience, and as we mentioned, Shelby Dermer talked about it just a couple of minutes ago, he mentioned that the morale of the locker room has always been great. It's never gotten too high. They've never gotten too low. And ultimately, that's why they've been able to bounce back. So a big game coming up on Wednesday against St. John's.
And yeah, you talk about what can this Musketeers team do to bounce back? How can they bounce back? Taking down St. John's pretty convincingly in their upcoming game in 2 days. If they can take down St. John's pretty convincingly at home, that sets them up for that road game against DePaul, and then the next game, a home game against Villanova. They take down St. John's convincingly, especially after losing by 15 to this Red Storm team earlier on in the season. You take down St. John's convincingly, that is going to give this team confidence, even more confidence than they already have. It's going to give them some momentum going throughout the remaining schedule that they have left to go in the regular season. But it's all going to I'm not going to say it has to start for St. John's because they can take down DePaul very convincingly as well, and that could spark some life in this team. But the better way to do it would be to take down this St. John's team that took you down pretty convincingly, 15 points. I think it was 81-66 the last time these two teams played this year. You take down St. John's convincingly at home, you prove that you've got it, and you prove that you can get some momentum going on your side. They've proven to themselves already a few times, this Musketeers team, that they've got it. I mean, you take a look at times, obviously, you have that 5-point loss in that game against UConn when UConn was number 4 in the country at home. That was a little bit of a demoralizing loss for this Musketeers team. Then you play against Providence, who was not ranked at the time, but they had only just recently been knocked out of the top 25. I think they were around 21st or 22nd in the country. And you, on the road, beat the doors off of them and beat them 85-65. It's been proven this year that Xavier can bounce back after tough losses. The game against UConn, obviously, on Sunday, was a little bit more of a harder loss to take, with it being, like you said, one of the biggest, the biggest loss that Xavier basketball has had in over 20 years. So bouncing back, we've seen Xavier do it. I'd like to see them do it against St. John's. Like I said, it doesn't have to be against St. John's because, like I've said, before that 3-game skid we saw the Red Storm go on, they were in the conversation for a top 25 team. They were one of the first few teams out. They would have been top 30 if the rankings were extended to top 30 instead of top 25. So if you're Xavier, I personally would like to see them have a bounce-back game against St. John's. But I'm not saying it's not impossible if they don't take down the Red Storm. I'm not saying it's completely impossible that they can't have a win on the road against DePaul and that be the momentum swing and that be the kind of win that they need to have to get the rest of the season on track. I just would prefer it to be myself, and I would feel the team might kind of agree with this a little bit too. I would much rather like to see that bounce back win be against a team that's already beat us this year pretty convincingly, and we can get back at them and take them down at home, and that can spark a run throughout the remainder of the regular season.
Matt, and not to mention the fact that obviously we're going to talk about college basketball quite a bit tomorrow on our show. That's what the majority of the show is going to be about. Tomorrow is college basketball. So for those of you who like college basketball, make sure to stay tuned because tomorrow is going to be the majority of it. But some news, AP poll was released just a couple of hours ago. University of Dayton, they dropped from 16 all the way down to 21 after their loss against Richmond. Richmond, a very good team. They lost it on the road. You didn't play their best. Richmond now on the bubble on the outside looking in. And Matt, real quick before we go to a break, I did not ever think that I would live to see Indiana State having a better season than Indiana University. Indiana State, they are on the bubble, and Indiana, nowhere to be found. So I never thought I'd live to see the day, but here we are, January 29th, 2024, a.k.a. Matthew Pennington's birthday. Time for a break. We're going to shift our focus. We're going to stay on the college level, but we're going to go to college football, and that's all up next when we return.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
I'm thrilled to be at Wittenberg at this time and place, as the university is perfectly positioned to welcome an esports program like none other. Wittenberg's impressive athletics tradition and Tiger Up spirit, mixed with a strong commitment to student success, will allow for a program that competes at the highest level while also caring deeply for each player, both personally and professionally. Esports at Wittenberg will not only be about gaming, but will also be about changing the game. Together, we will build a supportive, dynamic community as we bring our own distinct light to the global phenomenon of esports right here in Springfield, Ohio. It's time to Tiger Up. Let's go.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Back here on Sports Now, Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington, the birthday boy. Matt, I just remembered. We
What?
were a little late getting up today because we were trying to figure out the new system. And I completely forgot. Shame on me. Shame on me. I forgot to sing to you.
Oh, no. Everybody cover your ears.
Happy birthday to you. Happy yada, 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 dear Matt. Happy birthday to you. Matt, we're on a tight schedule here. I had to squeeze it in. So the yada, 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 you got to improvise a little bit.
I mean, I know what was meant to be said in that yada, 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 so.
You get the point.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
My 2 years of Spanish in high school pays off. I could sing to you. I could sing it to you in Spanish as well.
I will not understand. I don't. I took German. You took Spanish.
My 2 years of Spanish, there's a little bit that I still know, and one of them is the happy birthday song.
I would not understand a word you're saying the whole time.
Feliz cumpleaños a ti.
How do I know you're not swearing at me?
Because I can't do that on air, Matt.
True. That is true.
Matt, I thought the older you get, you're supposed to get more wiser.
Yeah, but the best way that has been described by ourselves is we together are almost like Dumb and Dumber together. So, I mean, you nodding your head right now tells everybody out there what all they need to know about me saying that right there. So, you know, you never know. You never know.
I got us sidetracked. I apologize, but
You
I
did
just
that.
want to let everybody know that it is my broadcasting partner and my best friend's birthday today. So he did that to me on my birthday a few weeks ago. Now you can't call me an old head. And let's move on. Let's talk about Michigan football. And the reason why I know we're in Southwest Ohio, and the reason why we're talking about Michigan football in Southwest Ohio is because they've been in the news, and it has not been for Spygate. It's been because Sharon Moore is now been promoted to being the new head coach and really the man in charge for the Michigan Wolverines in that football program. And again, we're in Southwest Ohio. Why are we talking about it? Because they play Ohio State next season, just like every season. It's the biggest rivalry. And not just college football, but all of college sports. So Sharon Moore now taking over for Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, of course, leaving to become the coach of the LA Chargers. There's a lot of turnover right now for the Michigan Wolverines, including multiple coaches. Their defensive coordinator, Minter, has been reported that he's going to be joining Harbaugh in Los Angeles. Obviously, there's been a few other coaches that have left Michigan to either pursue elsewhere or go with Harbaugh. So now you have Sharon Moore in charge, who seems like now he's got to rebuild that coaching staff. Not only that, but of course, all the players they lost, all the players are going to the NFL, all the seniors they lost. They have a lot of players that they can backfill in. But as we talked to Caleb Spinner again on Thursday, it seems like Michigan, they don't have any of the big recruits such as Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. They got in this recruiting class. So a lot of turnaround right now for the Michigan Wolverines. And that's why we're talking about it. When obviously that's why we're talking about it, because they're rivals with Ohio State. So obviously, you know the saying, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. And of course, Ohio State, they're paying attention to what Michigan's doing up in Ann Arbor. And frankly, there's a lot of question marks heading into next season for the Michigan Wolverines. Question marks like, I'm not saying that they're not going to make a bowl game or anything like that, but question marks on if they're going to be as dominant as what they've been over the last couple of years.
And yeah, the second I saw that Harbaugh was going to the Chargers, I kind of had a feeling that Moore was going to be the one to take over.
It was the right decision.
It was the right decision for Michigan, and it kind of felt like it didn't feel exactly like when Ryan Day took over, when Urban Meyer had to take a few games off early on in the season. Ryan Day took over as the head coach for those games, and then Urban Meyer came back. It kind of felt like it was going to be a similar situation with Jim Harbaugh missing the last few games of the regular season last year, and then Moore stepping in to take his place. It kind of felt like it was, if Harbaugh leaves, Moore should be the guy to be the head coach for Michigan. And like I said, the second I saw Jim Harbaugh was going to LA for the Chargers, I kind of figured that Moore was going to be the head coach. I mean, he went 3-0 for the Wolverines as the head coach, beat Ohio State, beat Penn State in those 3 games. Those are 2 of some of the best teams. Obviously, not the top 3 now that we've got Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Washington all joining the Big Ten this year. I would say one of those 2 teams, or one of those 4 teams, I should say, might be able to slip up into the top 3 in the conversation and maybe bump Penn State down a spot. But talking about the fact that, you take down some of the best teams in the Big Ten, and you're coming in as an interim head coach because Harbaugh has been suspended for a few games, and you end up going 3-0, and you take down your biggest rival in Ohio State and another one of your somewhat big rivals, obviously not the biggest, but Penn State's starting to become a rival with a lot of the bigger teams in the Big Ten with how good they've been playing the past few years. So it did not surprise me at all when Moore was named the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. And I know not a lot of people are going to like hearing me say this, but there's one player that I am kind of excited to see what he's able to do in Michigan, Jordan Marshall, running back from Moeller down in Cincinnati, because I've been keeping an eye on him. Obviously, Jackson and I, we announce high school football. We kind of have to keep an eye out for the Dayton and Cincinnati area, talking about all the players, talking about where they're committed to play football, where they're thinking of going. Jordan Marshall, one of the best running backs in the Cincinnati/Dayton area, he's going to play football up in Ann Arbor. So I'm not going to root for Michigan in the slightest. You will never hear the words "Go Blue" come out of my mouth.
You just said it.
I'm saying in the context of rooting for Michigan, you will never in a million years hear those words come out of my mouth. But I would like to see, not against Ohio State, but I'd love to see Jordan Marshall do pretty good up in Michigan.
Jordan Marshall, Mr. Football in the state of Ohio, and again, a prestigious career at Moeller High School as well. But again, when you look at Moeller, or I beg your pardon, when you got me sidetracked there. When you look at Michigan, there's outside of Marshall, there's they have some great recruits coming in. Obviously, they're a Big Ten school, they're reigning national champions, but there's a lot more question marks than there is. Oh, this team's going to be able to repeat. You look at teams such as Georgia under Kirby Smart. When you look at Alabama when they were under Nick Saban, now, of course, Nick Saban retired. But obviously, it seemed like each and every year they were such big powerhouses that recruiting classes just got bigger and bigger and better for them throughout their tenures. But then you look at Michigan, and it hasn't been that way. They've had the same, it seems like they've had the same group, obviously a few players turning over, but they've had the same group growing over the last 3 years. And obviously over those last 3 years, they beat Ohio State, they won the Big Ten, they went to the college football playoff. The last year they ended up being national champions. So obviously, when you have a young team that already starts out with high expectations, and they stick around, they're just going to continue to develop into being what we saw this season, a 15-0 year, national champions for the Michigan Wolverines. But now they're gone. And now since you've had those same players, it seems like for the last three seasons, you have some reserves that have gotten some playing time in, but they haven't gotten the starting caliber plays or snaps or anything like that on the field. So you're going to have a lack of experience out there. And then now you also lose your head coach, Jim Harbaugh, who goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. Sharon Moore takes over, which, as you mentioned, is the right decision because he was able to fill in, go 3-0 when Harbaugh served that suspension by the Big Ten. And not only that, but I know that a lot of people out there want to overlook, since Harbaugh's gone, the Spygate and everything that was surrounding Connor Stallions with the University of Michigan's. And Matt, I know that we haven't gone too much into depth on that because there really has been no verdict, but obviously with Harbaugh now leaving Los Angeles, just because he's gone doesn't necessarily mean that Michigan, if it is true, obviously innocent until proven guilty, but if it is true, they may still receive some sort of punishment. So at the end of the day, there's a lot to clean up for Michigan. There's a lot of people out there saying that Harbaugh left a giant mess at Michigan. I don't necessarily think that's the case. He won a national championship. His last season at Michigan, he was a national champion. So at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that you could say he's got a mess to clean up. Because they're coming off that national championship, but at the same time, you're going to see a new-look Michigan team. I would expect with Sharon Moore taking over, similar play styles, similar schemes to what Jim Harbaugh ran. I think it's going to be pretty much status quo, but obviously, new coach, you're going to have to get their players in. Now you're going to have to get more players, some experience on the field, and not just that, but now deal with anything that comes with the Connor Stallions and the Spygate situation for the Michigan Wolverines. I'm not saying that this is a team that's going to be 5-7, 6-6, and miss out on a bowl game. I'm not saying that. I don't think that this team's going to replicate as 15-0 next season. I think that this is a team that could still win 9 to 10 games on the year. They're still going to be competing to get into the college football playoff. They're just not going to be as dominant as this season. But Michigan, heading into this new season, maybe we see them with a new group of kids, start to groom them like this class of 2024 that we just saw.
And yeah, I would say, talking about the conversation and the talking point of Harbaugh leaving a mess in Michigan, if Spygate ends up coming out to actually be a punishable offense, then I would say that yes, he did leave a little bit of a mess in Ann Arbor, but obviously you can win a national championship and then still have some craziness and a mess to clean up afterward. That's still totally possible, but obviously, like you said, it's innocent until proven guilty. So as of right now, Harbaugh did not leave a mess in Michigan. The only mess that there could have been that was left is the fact that you've got a ton of players moving on and not going to be returning for next season for the Michigan Wolverines. And that's one thing talking about Michigan in this offseason. Obviously, it's a little bit different because Michigan is not as heavy into the transfer portal like we're seeing a ton of other teams have done in the past few years. But Michigan compared to like Ohio State when it comes to the transfer portal, it's night and day between both of the two teams. Day, obviously, this was honestly, now thinking about it, this was no pun intended. Ohio State has been the day when it comes to the transfer portal. I mean, you take a look at who they've been able to get. It's been absolutely insanity for Ohio State. And Michigan, when it comes to the players they've picked up in the transfer portal, they've kind of been ice cold. There hasn't really been much going on when it comes to Michigan in the transfer portal. They've brought in a few players, but we've also seen a ton of players leave Michigan as well. So talking about Michigan this offseason, like I said, I fully expected Moore to be the head coach. Once I saw Harbaugh moving on to LA, I fully expected that to be the case for the Michigan Wolverines. And also, when it comes down to, like you brought up, did Harbaugh leave a mess in Michigan and in Ann Arbor? Like I said, if Spygate comes out to be a punishable offense and it's found that, yeah, they actually did some illegal stuff in Ann Arbor, then there was a little bit of a mess left by Harbaugh. But like we said, as of right now, it's innocent until proven guilty. So there's been no mess left in Ann Arbor.
It is time for a break. When we return, we're gonna take a couple minutes break. When we return, we're gonna shift focus to the team in Ohio, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They've made a lot of moves in the transfer portal. They've made a lot of moves on the coaching staff. We touched base on it a lot with Caleb Spinner last Thursday. But Matt, you weren't here for that. We want your thoughts and more. That's all coming up next on Sports Now.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
I'm thrilled to be at Wittenberg at this time and place, as the university is perfectly positioned to welcome an esports program like none other. Wittenberg's impressive athletics tradition and Tiger Up spirit, mixed with a strong commitment to student success, will allow for a program that competes at the highest level while also caring deeply for each player, both personally and professionally. Esports at Wittenberg will not only be about gaming, but will also be about changing the game. Together, we will build a supportive, dynamic community as we bring our own distinct light to the global phenomenon of esports right here in Springfield, Ohio. It's time to Tiger Up. Let's go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Back here on Sports Now, 5:34 p.m. Eastern Time. We are live until 6 p.m. here on the TKDS Sports Network. For those of you who are new, well, welcome to Sports Now. We are live Monday through Thursday, 4 to 6, Saturday from 8 to 10. Obviously, when we're not sick on Saturdays, but nonetheless, that was a reference that we don't call off sick on purpose. That was a reference that we didn't have a show on Saturday because there was something going around the studio, but Matt's better. We're all better. We're good to go. But Matt, let's continue our talk. We were just talking about Michigan football now going through a complete turnover with Sharon Moore taking over. That news was announced after our show on Thursday. And now we flipped the script and let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Ohio State, that football team, we talked about them a lot this offseason, frankly, because they've made the most moves, I'd say, out of any other school in college football. They have utilized the transfer portal to their advantage. It's almost like they're, as Caleb Spinner announced on Thursday, with how many guys they've gotten from Alabama, instead of scarlet and gray, it's going to be crimson and gray before too long, because how many players they've gotten from the Crimson Tide in Alabama in the transfer portal has been absolutely insane. And now, not to mention the fact that you add Bill O'Brien to the coaching staff, a coach who 52-48 as a head coach from the Texans. He got pretty much run out of town with the whole Deshaun Watson situation. Went to the Patriots, was the offensive coordinator, worked alongside Tom Brady. Yes, the last couple of years with the Patriots have not been well, but at the same time, I don't think there's anybody in the world that can make that Patriots offense look absolutely great on the field. So Bill O'Brien, a lot of experience, a lot of good experience as well, becoming the offensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Matt, as we mentioned multiple times before, Ryan Day going to be entering this season, it seems like, on the hot seat. We both agree. It's a good decision that he keeps his job at least for one more season. But one more loss to Michigan, and not just that, but with the roster that he has, this is the most complete. This is the best roster Ohio State's going to have, and it's really national championship or bust coming into this football season for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
And yeah, you're talking about the transfers for Ohio State. Obviously, when you've got the best college football coach in, at least if you don't want to say he's the best of all time, I'm going to say he's the best of all time. But if you want to say in recent memory, leaving the program and retiring, you're going to have a lot of players transfer. I mean, you take a look at the top 6 transfers in the portal this year. 4 of those 6 come from Alabama, 2 of which are going to Ohio State now. One of them, Caleb Downs, who is the number 1 prospect in the transfer portal. He's committed to Ohio State. Julian Sayin, he was number 6. He's going to Ohio State. Move down a few more spots. You have Judkins, number 8 overall prospect. He's going to Ohio State. The number 1, I think he was the number 1 running back prospect. But you just take a look at this Ohio State team so far this year. it's safe to say, and then that's not even mentioning the fact that Will Howard also going to Ohio State. So talking about all of the different players that Ohio State has seen transfer in so far this year, it's safe to say that the Buckeyes this year have hit the transfer portal. They have hit the transfer portal not as hard as they could, but it feels like it's almost as hard as they could. When you've got 3 of the top 8 prospects in the transfer portal going to your team this year, you take a look at the other players. You've got one, Aiden Childs going to Michigan State. You have Evan Stewart going to Oregon. You have Isaiah Bond going to Texas. You have Walter Nolan going to Ole Miss. And you have Caden Proctor going to Iowa. Those are the other players inside of the top 8. And if you want to go to top 10 all the way down to top 10, Dante Moore going to Oregon and then Caden Green going to Missouri. The only other team with more than one player and more than one prospect in the top 10 transferring to their school is Oregon, who has number 5 and number 9. Then you've got Ohio State with number 1, 6, and 8. And then not to mention Will Howard, the 43rd ranked prospect in the transfer portal, transferring to Ohio State as well. It's safe to say that Ohio State in this offseason, they've definitely hit the ground running trying to get players to go to Ohio State from the transfer portal. And it's safe to say Ohio State this year, they are reloading. I wouldn't say to the max, but you get a feeling that with what this Ohio State team what they were able to do last year, especially on the defensive side of the football, and that's where a big chunk of the team is returning, on that defensive side of the football, it's safe to say this Buckeyes team right now, with the transfers that they've got, they are in a win a national championship this season. They're not, I wouldn't say this season alone, but they are in we are winning a national championship mode right now. And in Columbus, I feel like that might be I probably wouldn't say I'm the only person that thinks that, but with the amount of transfers they've got coming to Ohio State, the amount of returning players that they could have had and we could have seen go to the NFL draft, I think it's safe to say the players and the coaches alike, they're in that we're winning a national championship this year kind of mentality right now there in Columbus.
And Matt, not to mention the fact you mentioned national championship or bust, and I mentioned that Ryan Day, if he loses to Michigan, if he doesn't go on the postseason run that Ohio State wants, this is a guy that could be on the hot seat. This is a guy that could be losing his job and not be the head coach because, again, you look back at the tenure at Ryan Day, Matt, you and I have talked about it multiple times on the show, but you look back at it during his tenure at Ohio State, the year they went to the college football playoff and lost to Georgia in that semifinal. They had a great offense, very tenacious offense led by C.J. Stroud, but then the defense, I'm going to just come out and say that, and I don't mean to be a blunt about it. It was awful. It was atrocious, that defense that entire season was. Then you go and look at last season. The defense was great. The offense did not live up to the expectations. And I don't know necessarily what the offense's problem was. It just seemed like they could not put a consistent football game together. Kyle McCord, I think that he got a bad rap. I think that he played a good season for Ohio State. He was run out of Columbus for no reason. But at the end of the day, there were some games he was inconsistent. You look at the running game. Travion Henderson, he was hurt a little bit, and there were also games where they were a little banged up, weren't consistent running the football. The offensive line showed glaring issues all season long for Ohio State. The play calling stood out, showed glaring issues all season long for Ohio State. That's really what it comes into the factor that now you have Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes. How much of a say is he going to have in running the offense? Is it still going to be Ryan Day calling plays? Is it still going to be his scheme of offense? Is it going to be a conjoint effort? Or is Bill O'Brien going to take that all the way over? That's still to be unanswered. And frankly, we probably won't kind of have an answer on that until middle of the summer. But with how much that Ohio State's brought in, Ohio State has the potential to have a top defense and a top offense next season in college football. And that's something that Ryan Day's never had. He's never had consistency on both sides of the football. So when you look back at now Ryan Day, who now has the most complete team and the best roster that he's ever had, as with being the coach for the Ohio State Buckeyes, Kayla mentioned it on Thursday, the expectations increased though a little bit from just to beating Michigan, but to winning at least a playoff game or making something out of this roster. The Ohio State, they've loaded up to try to get a national championship run. And frankly, I think they've done a great job. I think that they need some key pieces a little bit more, especially on that offensive line. But at the end of the day, with what Ohio State has done, you have a lot of hype heading into this offseason. And frankly, if Ryan Day can't live up to the expectations, they lose a fourth game in a row to Michigan team who's expected to be a little bit more down this season than years past, or if they can't make it to the college football playoff, or if they make it and lose first round, second round, yada, 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 Ryan Day, there's a very good chance that if that were to happen and the season doesn't go as planned for Ohio State may be cutting ties with them at the end of the season. And if that were the case, I think it would be the time.
And yeah, that's one thing I've heard when it comes down to the Bill O'Brien hiring as the offensive coordinator for Ohio State. I've heard a lot of people bring up and talk about, is he really going to be that good at Ohio State? I'll tell you what, he was pretty good with the Texans when he was the head coach of Houston.
Turned him around.
Completely. With Deshaun Watson, and then obviously, like you said, the whole Deshaun Watson scandal kind of, it's not that ushered him out of Houston, but it definitely caused issues with him being successful there in Houston. And then with the Patriots, I'll say this much. You could have put the best offensive coordinator in the country in that Patriots offense, and they may have gone 6-11 at best. That Patriots offense was so dysfunctional pretty much all season long. You could have put the best offensive mind in NFL history at the helm of that offense, and they might not have even gone 500 last year. It was that dysfunctional in New England. So some people want to think about, and some people want to talk about, well, he wasn't good in New England. Nobody would have been good in New England. It doesn't matter who you put in that position. New England was just so dysfunctional last year on offense. It would have been tough to put anybody into that position and have them be successful. So talking about Bill O'Brien, some people are questioning it as, is it a good idea? He didn't do that good in New England. He just hasn't done good the past few years. I'm looking back at what he was able to do in Houston when he had a good team. Ohio State's a pretty good team. The fact that they had so many dysfunctionalities in that offense and still ended up being the number 10 team in the country at the end, in the final AP poll, after all of the bowl games were done, they were placed in 10th. It's safe to say that, especially with some of the transfers Ohio State's getting to, especially at the quarterback position, and the fact that they just keep getting top wide receiver prospects every single year, or not prospects, but they keep getting top wide receiver talent from the high school level every single year. And now they've got Judkins coming in. They have Henderson returning. It's safe to say Bill O'Brien, as the offensive coordinator, if he has the full realm of the offense and he's calling all the plays, he's going to be like a kid in a candy store with all the players he's going to have at Ohio State. So going from New England to Ohio State, I think that it should be good for Bill O'Brien. I'm not saying it's going to be the next college football dynasty and they're going to turn into Georgia like we saw the past few years and ring off a couple back-to-back, or I wouldn't say 3 in a row, but say they ring off a couple national championships, and the only reason they don't end up winning another one is because they get knocked out or they lose the national championship game, something like that. But I think it's safe to say, me personally, I like the Bill O'Brien hiring. I think it's going to be a good thing for this Ohio State team. Yes, he didn't do that good in New England, but like I said, you couldn't have put the smartest offensive coordinator in NFL history in that New England Patriots team and expect them to potentially even make the playoffs last year. That's how dysfunctional that team was. I look back at what Bill O'Brien was able to do with Houston before the whole Deshaun Watson situation came about. That team was consistently in the conversation of making it into the playoffs, making the playoffs, winning playoff games, and there were years where Deshaun Watson was in the conversation for the MVP multiple different times when Bill O'Brien was the head coach of the Texans. So I'm looking at that form of Bill O'Brien where he had where he had a good offense, where he had a good team behind him, and that's what I'm looking for when it comes to Bill O'Brien at Ohio State. We know Ohio State's going to be a good team, especially with the fact that a majority of the defense is returning. Obviously, I know it's offensive coordinator that that's going to be his position. He's not going to be controlling the defense, but with the fact that you've got so much talent on that defensive side to help the offense, because some people want to say it's offense or defense. One doesn't. Some people say that they don't help each other. I'll tell you what, defense getting stops helps an offense out a ton. So now how good that defense is and with how good the players at Ohio State are going to be on offense, I feel like for this upcoming season, I think it's safe to say that Bill O'Brien hire should end up being a net positive for Ohio State.
It is time for a break. We're going to be back. When we return, we have about 10 minutes left in the show. And Matt, it's been forever since we talked about the UC Bearcats and their men's football team. So we're going to talk about that coming up next to close out our show on Sports Now.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
I'm thrilled to be at Wittenberg at this time and place, as the university is perfectly positioned to welcome an esports program like none other. Wittenberg's impressive athletics tradition and Tiger Up spirit, mixed with a strong commitment to student success, will allow for a program that competes at the highest level while also caring deeply for each player, both personally and professionally. Esports at Wittenberg will not only be about gaming, but will also be about changing the game. Together, we will build a supportive, dynamic community as we bring our own distinct light to the global phenomenon of esports right here in Springfield, Ohio. It's time to Tiger Up. Let's go.
Whenever you're feeling good and hungry, it's Skyline time. Gather together with friends and family. It's Skyline time.
Being Friday, everyone's looking forward to the weekend. Skyline's a good way to kind of kick that off.
You smell the chili, you hear the crowd, and they're having a good time. Skyline Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays definitely happen as well.
We love it every time we go.
We love serving families our real family recipes, made fresh with quality ingredients. And we love helping families find ways to stretch a buck. You see, we've always been about value, with coupons and money-saving offers, like the free pizzas you get with our buddy cards, making it easier for families to share a meal and a laugh. With flavors so good, the only thing left are the crumbs and the memories. La Rosa's, the real family pizzeria.
Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. TKDS sponsored by McAfee Heating and Air, La Rosa's Pizza, Skyline Chili, and we're looking for more as well. So if anybody out there has a business, knows anybody with a business, we have some good numbers on this show. So we're very thankful for all the lovely listeners and viewers out there. No matter what part of the show that you watch it, no matter where you watch it, no matter if you watch it when it's up on demand later, very fortunate, very blessed to have a lot of great, loyal listeners and viewers. And we just want to say we love you all. But Matt, let's move on. Let's talk about some UC football. And it's been a while since we talked about the University of Cincinnati and their football. We talked about them a lot during the season, and rightfully so, because this team was atrocious. They won 3 games all year long. And this was a team that started off the year 2-0. And after we saw them start off 2-0, yes, a win against Eastern Kentucky, a game they should have won. Good teams beat teams how they're supposed to beat them. And then you see them win against Pittsburgh, and that was a big win for them. And you get the sense that, hey, we're 2-0. This is a Bearcats team. Remember, they made the Final Four a couple of seasons ago. This is a team that's really been in the conversation. They've been in the mix. Obviously, new head coach Scott Satterfield after Luke Fickell left to become the head coach at the University of Wisconsin, to become a Badger. But then you look at after that game against Pittsburgh, it was downhill. They lose to Miami of Ohio. And that was a game that, obviously, if you're a Bearcat and you're playing in the Big 12 and you don't win that game against a MAC school, it looks bad, number one. Number two, that's a rivalry you've dominated, and then you lose it. And then ever since then, it just went downhill, downhill, downhill in a spiraling effect, and their only win for the rest of the year was against Houston. So when you look at the Bearcats, there was a lot of slack going around for first-year head coach Scott Satterfield. Matt, as we mentioned, it takes time. When you have a coach coming in from a different program, it's going to take time. It's going to take a couple of years for them to implement their culture, their schemes, and not just that, the most important factor, getting their players in the recruiting classes fully in. This offseason, they've had a lot of turnover, the Bearcats have, and it's been an important offseason, and there's been a lot of guys that have left. There have been a lot of guys that have come to the University of Cincinnati. And Cincinnati football is expecting a better season next year, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be quite where it needs to be. That may take another year or two, but Cincinnati looking to show some improvement this year, and you look at all the portal moves that they've made, they haven't added a 4-star or 5-star. It's all been practically 3 stars for the University of Cincinnati, which with them being one of the worst teams in the Big 12 last season, obviously you're going to have those instances happen. But at the end of the day, this is a team that they lost a lot, but they've also gained a lot. And the number one man that comes to mind, of course, is Ohio State former running back Pryor. Pryor ended up going to Evan Pryor, now going to the UC Bearcats. He's going to be there alongside Corey Kiner, who's still there, who had a great season a year ago. Kai Stokes from Ohio State now going to the UC Bearcats. So there's a lot of players for UC that they're bringing in that can compete, that can get a starting job day one. The 1-2 punch with Kiner and Pryor, I think, is going to be excellent. It's going to be great to watch. The biggest question, though, is the worst part last season, it seemed like, for the Bearcats was quarterback play. And they didn't go out and pursue a quarterback in the transfer portal. So they're comfortable with their quarterback room at the school. And it's a little, that could be a question mark. A lot of question marks for the Bearcats hanging into the season. Defense was inconsistent. Offense was inconsistent. Bearcats, they need a lot than just one offseason to turn that program around. But with how this offseason's gone, with them utilizing the transfer portal to their best of their abilities, at the end of the day, this is a team that is trying to make the most and trying to just exceed expectations and get back to improving.
And yeah, that's one thing from UC. You talk about the struggles that we saw them have a season ago. We had a few weeks to sing praises and talk about how much we liked watching what UC was bringing to the table. Obviously, those being the first 2 weeks of the season where they won the 2 games early. And then it just seemed like there wasn't anything UC could get done when it came down to completely playing a full 4 quarters of football. And if this Bearcats team, obviously, we've talked about it so many different times, if you have a head coach going from one program to a different program, it's going to take a little bit more time, as opposed to if Cincinnati went instead of deciding to get Satterfield, they had maybe taken a coach from the coaching staff that was under Fickell and then promoted them up to the head coach. Usually when you have that happen, you might see a little, I wouldn't say it's guaranteed instant success. They're going to be just as good as they were the prior season, but you're going to see a little bit more success if you see a coach rise the ranks and climb the ranks and be the head coach after being maybe the quarterback coach for the last season and then climbing the ranks to be the head coach once Fickell leaves. But the fact that Satterfield came in from a different program, I mean, it's a completely different change when it comes to the players on the team, the schemes for the team on both offense and defense, especially with head coach. That's where you see the most change, because that coach is going to try to mold the team to his liking on both offense and defensive sides. I mean, one coach that comes to mind to me. Obviously, we're talking about Ohio schools. It's not exactly the same, but talking about Jim Knowles at Ohio State. His first year, the defense wasn't the best, but then got a little bit of time went by. The players at Ohio State started to buy into Jim Knowles' style of defense, and he was able to start getting some of his recruits into Ohio State. And then we saw what Ohio State's defense did a season ago. They were one of the best defenses in college football. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for UC to be a team that is punching with the big dogs inside of the Big 12, teams like Oklahoma, which, speaking of, talking about them punching up with them, they played pretty close in that game against Oklahoma earlier on this year. But I think it might take another year or two for this Bearcats team to start playing some of those tougher teams to a better level. But I do think it's totally possible with the fact that this Bearcats team, a couple of years ago, we were talking about them in the national championship conversation. So it might take some time, but I do think UC can climb that ladder in the Big 12 and end up eventually being one of the better teams in the conference.
Well, once again, happy birthday to our very own Matthew Pennington, and welcome back after your almost 2-week-long hiatus. But at the end of the day, alongside Matthew Pennington, our producer, Kevin Fowler, I'm Jackson Lightcap. Thanks for dealing with us. We're live tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. as we're talking college basketball. Until then, we'll talk to you in about 22 hours.